Hey, Kathy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to
Great to
be
have
here.
you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah. So for our listeners, if they haven't met you yet, Kathy Meis is the founder and CEO of Bublish, the world's first complete publishing solution with integrated brand building, marketing, and discoverability features. Kathy, it's great to have you.
Well, it's great to be here. Yeah, too. Always nice to talk about one of my favorite geek subjects, metadata.
Absolutely. So before we get into the metadata and the importance of
Yeah.
it for authors to understand, tell us a little bit about just how you got started in the publishing industry.
Oh, sure. I'm a graduate of Indiana, like you were. And before I even graduated, I started in journalism, based CBS affiliate in Louisville, Kentucky, and started reporting. Always loved content. And then moved into print and worked for Forbes and built editorial brands for them from scratch, which is a really interesting thing. And then, really, as my career grew, I watched what happened to editorial brands in general when they transitioned into the online world and digital became part of our lives. And it really wasn't such a great thing. That happened because the physical container actually has a lot of power for authors and writers. And so I had also been a freelancer and ghostwriter for business books, and I saw what was happening there and started to think about the problem. And that's how I developed Bublish, was to kind of create a digital branded container for authors to share their content and not have it all broken apart, as is what happens often online.
What do you mean by broken apart?
Well, there's just, and this is part of the metadata conversation is, now people are creating digital books themselves are metadata. People are excerpting from them. People are talking about them. There's blogs, there's social, there's a bunch of different pieces. And I just wanted to create really that online, that browsing experience that people have in a bookstore, where you go in, you pick up the book, you're at the shelf for context, and you pick up the book and you browse it, and it's a very quiet moment. So we created something at Bublish called the book bubble, to recreate that in a digital way. And, books, of course, in their physical containers are highly branded. There's a lot of branding that goes into the cover. There's a lot of branding that goes into even the style of fonts. So I wanted that to happen online so that people could browse online. And it was just thinking about how to keep that kind of micro moment together. As I think that's a Google term, that people are having all these micro moments. Well, I wanted to create that bookstore browsing experience that was so powerful, but not happening as much in the real world as it used to.
Awesome. So what is metadata? Because, a lot of people don't even know what that means. I didn't know what that means when I started out.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those terms that everybody, has a deer in the headlights moment, but actually it's really just all the information that you're inputting in about your book. It's the data about your book, the metadata. So any piece of information that you input when you upload your book to an online retailer or add it to a social site, you have two types of metadata. Basically, you have that simple stuff like your ISBN, your title, your subtitle, your series title. Then you have the enriched metadata, which is more like your reviews, your bio, your awards that you might have gotten. And it's that enriched metadata that's really the opportunity, because what's changed in the book industry is that metadata was really created to just channel books through this massive distribution channels that have been set up to get books from, a plant to a bookstore. So it was really just a back end thing that was about managing content. And then, online databases evolved and became it more discoverable for these channels. And then the third wave was really becoming more consumer facing. And that's what we see now, that metadata is actually being created in the form of hashtags around books, tagging of blogging content that relates to your books. All of these things are pieces of metadata that are being created about your content. And as algorithms and mobile trends and all types of recommendation systems from Siri to Echo with Amazon, those are all enhancing the need for authors to realize that metadata isn't just about distribution channels. It's actually creating your online web of information, your brand, as it were. So when I talk about metadata is your brand, it really is becoming that, because metadata is now very consumer facing. When you go to Amazon and you look at that product page, that's packed with metadata about your book, and a lot of it is missed opportunities is what I see. When you go to a blog site, or you go to an author's web page and you see inconsistencies in how the book is described, or even the way that their name is input, little tiny details that are inconsistent. Well, you and I can make those differentiations, and we can get to the point, but a computer is very unforgiving. And on the back end of this World Wide Web is a map of you and your book and your brand and what it means. And these computers are trying to make sense of you in a very strict sense, because they're just putting this information into databases and fields and retrieving it and mixing and matching it. And the more consistent and accurate and rich you can be about informing all those back-end systems, the more likely you are to pop. A great example of that is a rich snippet. So if you go and you Google yourself, for example, and you might just see your name and your face. But if you go and you actually fill out certain forms that Google allows you to fill out, you can create an extremely rich experience when people find your name. I've done this when I've presented on this topic. I'll go and I'll look at 2 best-selling authors, and without fail, it's unbelievable. Like, one is highly optimized. We know everything about them. We know that they're a best-selling author in this genre. Here are their books, links to their books. There's a Wikipedia, really rich experience. And then you go to the other one, and it's just a name and a picture, because that whole opportunity was missed to enrich the metadata about that author's brand. So it's a lot more than just book metadata now. To be an author, you really have to have your brand message. You have to really do that work. You have to understand what is the promise you're offering to readers. And then you have to be able to translate that into words that will be picked up by places like Google and Amazon. So keyword rich descriptions of your brand. So your brand message has to be kind of computer friendly, as it were. So people have to start thinking about it. Metadata is much more a part of how they present themselves to the world online.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, well, I know that, for most people, the most kind of controllable, most relevant metadata for when you're first starting out as an author is like you're uploading your book to Amazon, right? And you're filling in the title and the subtitle and the description and the keywords and all that. So can we talk about that for a moment? Like those, those keywords, all that metadata you fill out when you upload your book to Amazon or when you buy your ISBN, how do you go about that process with your clients to teach them how to do it right, essentially? Because that you can control, it's immediate, and like everyone goes through that process.
Yeah, and I'll just step back 1 second and say a lot of it starts right in the manuscript and with great positioning. And we actually do a lot of positioning studies because metadata now is evolving so much, and you'll see this in genres and subgenres, and there's lots of opportunities. I actually tell authors to revisit their metadata up to 3 or 4 times a year and make sure it's really current and rich and accurate. But so you go to Amazon and you're uploading your book. There's a lot of opportunities for you to inform, again, not only about your the type of book you have, but about your brand. So it starts with your title. And again, another thing that we really say is, make sure that you research your title for your genre. There's a lot of things you can learn just by using Amazon and all of that metadata to do the research to get the best title. So you don't want a title that's overused. You want a title that really fits within the genre. Like sometimes you have really esoteric titles in literary fiction, and that's important to have a really other times in genre fiction, with a thriller, you might see that the norm is 2 to 3 words. But also strategically, from a brand perspective, you're sticking in that title, but you need to realize that if you're going to do this as a series, and I see this all the time, you have the opportunity to have a series title and a subtitle, and think about that in a more holistic fashion if you're starting out. Like if you think, okay, this is book 1, maybe I have book 2 or 3 in me, do that work before you create a cover, and which has to have all that information on it before you can put it in the fields, and make sure you have that strategic plan. Subtitles, awesome way to kind of speak directly to the type of reading experience. So we just kind of repositioned an author who has a great book, but wasn't kind of finding his audience. And part of the problem was he wasn't really telling them it's a kind of dystopian techno thriller. So in the subtitle, which then again, he also wrote a book that has become a series. So he's got the title, and then the subtitle has, techno thriller in it. And then the series title has the word dystopian in it. The subtitle in his genre also is very much about the character. So it's understanding what are the expectations of the readers in this genre. So they like characters. They like to know that you have a series in the thriller category. So then you go down to the next thing, and you're choosing your categories. So you've got a great cover, because the cover actually is your biggest piece of metadata. You've got a title, a subtitle, maybe a series title, and then you've got your categories. Now these, in each retailer, they're handled a little bit differently, so you have to work within the constraints of what you can actually do. It's called a pathway, actually, a category pathway. So you're telling them it's fiction or nonfiction. Maybe you go to juvenile fiction, and then you'd have opportunities to go into the genres. But you have to create a really clear pathway to describe your book. Sometimes you can't quite get it right. For example, young adult, middle grade, there's not a direct pathway. So you have to actually go and ask Amazon, and I highly recommend that you do this. You add that in the next level as a keyword, and then you ask them if it's not popping up to please, put that into your keyword strands. And a lot of times they will do it if it's an accurate, category pathway for them to create. And again, this is where things are evolving so quickly. So you have all of these standards like BISAC codes, which are kind of creating these pathways on a massive scale, and then are being applied by these retailers. And you can actually go to the BISAC sites and, go and look and see every year they update them. Some people think the future is going to be THEMA, which is a much more retailer-facing categorization of books. So kind of keeping up with this stuff and realizing it's dynamic and that you should be revisiting those categories every few months is important. The next thing you have then is your synopsis. Now, this is really key. You actually can tell the world the audience for your book. We do that a lot. So the opening, if you have something really big, like you're a bestseller or, you're an award-winning author, you want to make sure that gets up high in your synopsis in a short amount of time. But you kind of want to tell the readers really quickly about the reading experience they're going to get. And you can often define the audience. So like, we had a book that we positioned, and it's the protagonist is like a smart, young, sexy lawyer, graduate lawyer who's, fighting this big battle within her law firm. So, you can put in smart, savvy, sophisticated, sexy, almost as keywords at the start of your synopsis. So that's defining not only the protagonist, but who might relate to that protagonist and that's your audience. So you're kind of doing a little matchmaking like a dating site with that metadata right there at the top. So there's a lot of tricks, and a lot of people don't think how powerful that synopsis is. You know, another thing that people forget, that now that we've moved online, you've got 7 seconds, basically. They're going to look at your cover. So say you did a Facebook ad, or, you know, you have some funnel to get them to your product page. They look at your book cover for 7 seconds and they decide, am I in the right place? You know, the algorithms are pushing you towards them. Again, 7 seconds. Am I in the right place? This is a book experience for me. So you really better worry about every single word that goes into those fields to make sure that they say, yes, in 7 seconds, let me open, you know, and read more. Because if you've got a great reading experience and you're getting in front of the right person, you don't want to miss that opportunity for a sale. So that's really key. The other thing I see on Amazon that people miss is their Author Central site. Everybody has the opportunity to fill this out, right? Talk about author branding. They give you this whole tool set. Missing pictures, or, you know, they're not great pictures. The opportunity, if you have multiple books, to make sure they're all linked there, so that if someone's found one piece of your content, they can click to your name and find all your content. It's a great discoverability tool. Your bio, it shouldn't be, if you're a new author or an author, you know, who conveys, you know, just in a general sense what a nice person they are and they love cats. Okay, great, but you missed an opportunity to tell me about your author brand. What is the reading experience you're providing for me? All your editorial reviews. This is again on the rich type of metadata that you can put in. So there's 2 types of reviews. There's the type of review the readers actually input after they read your book and they give it stars. And then there are the editorial reviews. So say a blogger or a reviewer or a paid review, whatever. Those can go in through your Author Central space, and you can have tons of rich metadata there, a great experience. And that shows up not just on your author page, but on your product page for all your books, because it's part of that editorial space between. So it's really important. And again, the categories, the more, you know, granular you can become, the more specific, the higher you're going to rank in that category, and the more likely you are to actually find the readers who are looking for that type of reading experience.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So it's, you know, really powerful stuff. The other thing, you know, I think is people bop around. I think, I read an article by Google, and they said it's something crazy, like 70% of the people who go online, go on their smartphone or their tablet or their computer, and they're looking for one thing, don't end up buying what they thought they were looking for. So you've got this kind of clicking around to these experiences and kind of assessing, like, all right, who is this person? What is this book about? Da, da, da. So if they get to your website and it just doesn't reflect anything they saw on a review about you, or it looks, you know, unprofessional, or it doesn't have those visuals that is going to make them understand in 7 seconds they're in the right place, and you're providing the type of information, and then you don't have that linked to the next step. So if I land on your homepage and you really want to drive book sales, or you really want to build your email list and capture my name, you better have the tools in place to do that. And that's all, you know, connecting the dots for readers through different links, and links are, you know, a piece of rich metadata. You can put another thing that's a missed opportunity in the back of your ebook. Great place, you know, put a link to take readers right to your webpage, a landing page where they can sign up, maybe get a free chapter, something extra that they're kind of in the mood right after reading your book. So if there's a next book coming, download the free chapter here, you get their email. Now you've taken them from being an anonymous customer in this giant universe that is Amazon or Apple or Kobo or Barnes & Noble, and you've captured the information that you need to keep in touch with them and say, let's have a relationship. Let's be a fan of mine. I'd love to, and then you need to engage them with more content. But your entire book is a piece of metadata. And quite honestly, now there are tools reading that for context. So it's only going to get more driven by algorithms and computers that are going to give context to what the book is about and what you're about. So make sure you're informing them at every point that you have the opportunity.
Yeah, this is awesome. There's so much gold so far. Thank you, Kathy. I want to recap on one point and I have a follow-up question. So you mentioned, emailing Amazon, like if you can't find the right category for your book. Can you tell us, what do you mean by that? How does that work?
Well, so here's an example. So sometimes you upload metadata for your print book, you go through CreateSpace, and then sometimes you've only got an ebook. So you've got two different product pages there that are linked. But for example, we had an example where one time it was great on the side of the ebook, but not matching up. It was actually really wonky. And we just wrote, we called or emailed CreateSpace and said, listen, these are not aligned. And the guy basically walked us through, how to do it, and they became aligned. But we just had to alert them because it was clearly not being understood from the choices that we were given, which are a little bit different on CreateSpace and KDP. Now on KDP, they're amazing. They're very responsive, and I'm trying to think of the latest one. We were trying to fit a book that is an international crime thriller. Mystery, suspense, and thriller is a really crazy category because mysteries are really different than thrillers, and the pathway that they serve out kind of, we wanted like urban crime thriller on the back end. They couldn't bring us all the way to where that we wanted to go, but we did get a third category input that was about urban literature. So it kind of enriched it in a different way, but you have to get creative. And the key is, if you go on, if you're an author and you're doing this for the first time, the best thing to do is go to the top 10 books in your genre that you would want. If you created an algorithmic shelf, I want to be in this recommendation loop with these people, the quality's there, their name brand's there, and reach high. And then study their metadata. It's fascinating. There's a lot of small categories. They emerge out of the blue. No one tells you there's new sub categories. And, if there's an example of it on Amazon, you can do it too. So it may not pop from the choices you're given. The keywords, which we didn't talk too much about, but is the last area where you can put in up to 7 keyword strings. That's a great place to add to try to get that lowest layer of the category string correct, or the category pathway. But if it doesn't, do write to them and say, listen, I looked on this page and saw this category string, and you can actually show them, can this be replicated from my book? And if it can be, they will do it. They're very helpful that way.
Yeah, that's a great tip. It's surprising to me how many times, an author emails me with questions about their book or their listing, and I'm just say, hey, you really should email Amazon support or call them up because they can help fix those issues for you. And you're right. I mean, this stuff is really, really important because if your book is in the wrong category or the wrong keywords, or you don't have the description and all this other stuff is messed up, you're not going to get discovered, right? And that's what you're saying. That's the importance of this metadata, is that it's what's indexed in all these different search engines, and Google and Amazon and all these other industry databases, and all this stuff you don't see. You don't see them. A lot of us don't even know they exist, right? But it does exist, and it makes a huge difference. And that's how readers find you and actually end up buying your book. And so if you mess this stuff up, you're not going to have readers find you. You're not going to be selling more books. And even if you have a great book, it doesn't matter, because no one's going to know you have a great book if you don't put the right metadata in to let them know what your book is about and who it's for.
Yeah, and just to get them inside to the story. Because if you've got great content, and to me, that's the most frustrating thing, is to see those missed opportunities to get people into the book. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. So, and you know, I'll plug Bublish, because one of the things we really want to do is, you know, make sure that your brand has the metadata on the back end. So like every sample comes with all that metadata that you input from your book, plus keywords, genre, and it's just helping those search engines map. And social content is a great way to help inform all the algorithms running the World Wide Web, because right now it's highly valued, you know, especially, you know, on places like Google Plus, which we tell all our authors, okay, you know, it might not be the most active place, but it's highly favored in Google algorithms. So if you know, want them to notice your content, stick some bubbles up on Google Plus. But just be, you know, people, you know, that's one of the things about social, like constantly providing content that has metadata context on the back end, informing this, you know, mega brain that is the World Wide Web, that this is what you, the author, are writing about, this is why you're writing it, and this is your author brand, and these are your books, and here's all connecting the dots, link with hyperlinks. And it's really how people are finding things now. It's completely changed from 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So when you're talking about social media metadata,
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying essentially is like when you post on Google Plus or Twitter or Facebook about your book, and let's just make up what you're talking about, like a vampire romance novel, right? And so when you tweet the word, like the keyword vampire romance novel, the hashtag, and you post that on Google Plus and Facebook and everything else, and you link that then to your Amazon book page or your website, that the search engines are indexing that, and that they're finding that as like kind of like it's like a tip to say, hey, this is what my book is about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's there's some places that are highly optimized. Here's an interesting little tip. So Goodreads, there has a lot of lists, right? So Goodreads is a social network. If your book is on a list of, and some of these lists are really funky, but people are finding content that way, because those lists are run by a company called Listopia, and all they do is search engine optimization around these content lists that are produced by Goodreads and on their site. And I believe Goodreads owns them, or Amazon owns them. You pop at the very top, and somebody clicks, and there's your book in a list that's giving context about, so, you know, like brand new vampire novels for Halloween or whatever, you know, might have been searched. But there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of these lists on Goodreads. So getting your book, you know, sometimes you can slip in through a cover, you can slip in through, you know, just where the book is written, you know, is it a female protagonist, or is it, you know, a specific category, or, you know, about a topic that's really hot now, and a list is evolving. And if you're on that list, opportunity, another point of discovery in this crazy online world.
So how do you get on those lists?
Well, you have to have on Goodreads. Goodreads for authors, not fun, but and you have to have a following that nominates you for the list. But if you have a following built in that on that social platform, you can do it. Again, great place, because Goodreads is owned by Amazon. If you know those two systems are just linking more and more, and there's lots of interesting enriched metadata around reviews on Goodreads. So, you know, create an author profile on Goodreads, make sure it's, you know, as richly filled out as, you know, any of your retail sites, and start building a following there. And then, you know, have someone nominate you to the list when you see readers. So engage with them there. So that's you know, one of many social platforms. You know, again, your bio on Twitter is a great way to connect the dots. So where are you going to take those readers, right? You know, right below your bio is the link. You know, is it to your website? What do they find there? Does it have, the cover, a synopsis, who you are, why you write, and is it easy for them to go and explore more and go deeper? Is there a landing page that, it tells them, here's a free something so you can explore my work. Just give me your email. So you capture emails and then you can connect with those people. So you're channeling people from social connections through these micro moments into longer term connections. Facebook added for the fan pages has the learn more button. So many authors don't use this, where it can go right to your landing page or to your website. They're even, starting to add richer and richer things around books, like adding excerpts, which is something I think is brand new. The other thing I see there is the headers, the images are not matching up with the website or any sense of the author brand. They're just plain, again, a missed opportunity to add a photo. Here's another interesting tip on metadata. Every photo, including your book cover, can have photo metadata. So every time you would share your cover, you're showing the algorithms that metadata associated with that file. So when we have book covers done, our book cover designers always fill in the metadata for that file so that it's just optimized. And think of how many times you share an image of your book cover. So make sure that those files are doing their job too. And your book cover is your most important piece of metadata. In fact, was a study done by Nielsen, and the increase in sales for books that had full metadata, so complete metadata with that book cover image, sales went up by 432% just by adding the image. So really, really powerful. And all the information on that book cover, again, is metadata that allows you to fill out the fields in a way that matches it.
That's awesome. So how do you actually go about that? So for authors who don't understand, what is the metadata for an image? How do you actually fill in that information?
Well, I don't do it, but it is part of, I believe, Adobe systems. So if you just Google photo metadata, you can, and I will add, I actually do have a sheet that has a ton of information and links to all these sites on metadata. So if anybody wants to email me, Kathy@Bublish.com, Kathy, happy to send you those things. We also have some good resources on our Facebook page and on Twitter, but it's something that, someone dealing with the actual files while they're saving them would put in just fields that go in. I don't do it myself, but I know about it, so I make sure that's just a best practice that we have with our authors, and it's pretty easy to find that information online. But people
Awesome.
don't even know. They don't even know, right?
Right. Yeah. So we'll have links to all that great information in the show.
Yeah.
So you can follow along with that. Awesome. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing so much wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it. Before you go, can you tell us more about Bublish and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. So, our big thing is really helping the authors with discoverability. If you follow us on Twitter @PublishMe, you'll see a ton of live book bubbles, as I say, and we've got a free trial, so you can check us out. But our point is to really build the branding in and simplify the excerpting, enriching it with the story behind the story. So it becomes a way to brand yourself through your voice. And on the back end, we're doing all that metadata work. You input it once, and every time you share a link, it's all traveling with the bubble, as it were. And then all the links, like we say, all the links to your product pages at all the major online retailers we work with, the ability for other people to share your content, the ability for people to follow you on Bublish, the ability for you to drive people to your website, all from this little micro moment that they have right in their social channels. So again, content seeding, but having it optimized so that it's doing a lot of it's multitasking for you. It's building your brand through your picture of your book, your author insight, which is enriching your excerpt with the story behind your story, and then on the back end, all the metadata. Just building that web of information about who you are, what you do, why you do it, and why others should be interested, and telling the computers that in a language they understand while telling the world in a much more personal way. So that's kind of our mission. Discoverability is a big part of what we do.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. So where can people find out more? It's Bublish.com?
It's Bublish.com. So it's just like the word publish, but with a B. And it will autocorrect to other things like balloons and stuff. It's Bublish.com, and check us out. Yeah, we'd love to have you check out Book Bubbles.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks.